I was actually quite arrogant when I walked into this research project, expecting to be able to know the difference between decoy hosts, decoy credentials, and the real thing. I was pretty sure I could figure out how to identify and pivot to real machines. I really had no idea what I was going to be up against. I came from the HoneyNet days of running Gen 1, Gen 2 honeypots. I just assumed decoy technology was just lipstick on a pig. Same stuff, just different name, backed by VC money. Oh my god, was I wrong. I was wrong. But I'm big enough to admit it when I am wrong, though. I was definitely wrong in this case. For the last 20 years of my career, we've never seen as many new product categories in cybersecurity as we're seeing now. Honestly, I think it's probably gotten out of hand. I mean, security orchestration and response, NDR, EDR, XDR, breach and attack simulation. How does a CISO know what they actually need? That's the point of this research. I'm definitely a believer now. I wouldn't wish Illusive on my worst enemy. If a client that I was performing a penetration test for was running Illusive, I'd make them turn it off before the test started. You know, if you think I'm wrong, call my bluff. I dare you. You're about to see. You'll see. All right, everyone, you're going to be my co-pilots in this exercise. Let's have some fun. In this video, you're going to see two screens. One is going to be my Metasploit system that's running in Microsoft Azure, that's also running Apache. The second screen you're going to see is the graphical user interface for my RDP session, where Illusive has given me credentials in their cyber range. Now, this is very true to what's happening in the wild. With the work-at-home workforce, a lot of organizations weren't prepared for that. So a lot of them spun up RDP servers for their employees to log into via RDP. Unfortunately, this created a massive attack surface for these ransomware as a service gangs and some of these other crime syndicates who are targeting these organizations using either successful brute force attacks or credential stuffing tools in order to gain a foothold on the network. You're going to then see me download some tools from my Metasploit host that's also running Apache in order to get my tools on the host, and also execute the Meterpreter binary that I created with MSF Venom. Most of my operations in this living off the land exercise and attempt to pivot around within the network is going to be from my Metasploit system in the Meterpreter shell. So sit back, relax, grab that cup of joe. It's going to be a very exciting next hour. Okay, Knight.exe is the Meterpreter binary that I created with MSF Venom. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and run that when we're ready to go ahead and start up the Meterpreter shell to this victim host. But I'm not quite ready to do that yet. I'm going to grab a few more of my tools. So I'm going to do the same wget request, but this time for everything.exe. This tool basically just scours the host and network looking for files for me to be able to do keyword searches on, like passwords or credit card numbers, social security numbers, that sort of thing. It's a very powerful tool. Now, it's not a hacker's tool per se. It is a system tool that was meant for legitimate purposes, but is used by quite a few adversaries to find files containing sensitive information on a network. I'm going to go ahead and also grab a tool called Lasagna. I call it Lasagna, whatever. Now this tool is very similar to Kiwi or Mimikatz. Basically, it grabs all of the passwords it can possibly find on a victim host. And hopefully the credentials that it finds are real credentials and not synthetic credentials created by Illusive. Okay, so now that we have all of our tools downloaded to our victim host, we're going to go ahead and start Metasploit on our Metasploit host. You can think of it as the command and control server or C2 server that our victim is going to do a reverse connection to. And we want to prep Metasploit for doing that by using its multi-handler. Now, before I start Metasploit, I always like to start it with PostgreSQL. And what that does is it basically ties Metasploit to the backend database and allows you to use what are called workspaces. And workspaces are basically just little mini containers where all of your loot or evidence from your engagement can be stored. It allows you to stay more organized. So You know, I have a workspace, for example, for every engagement, allowing me to organize that loot or organize those credentials and other files that I grabbed from the post modules in Metasploit into just that one container or workspace. So in order to do that, it's pretty simple. We want to, first of all, make sure we're not root. Of course, you never really want to run anything in Linux as root, especially if you're in the middle of a penetration test. So I'm going to go ahead and start PostgreSQL. And to do that, we're going to run sudo service PostgreSQL start. And now we're going to go ahead and just type in MSF console. And we're going to go ahead and type in db_status and make sure that PostgreSQL is running and Metasploit is connected to it. It looks like it is. Now we're going to go ahead and just type in workspace, and that will list all of our workspaces. In order to create a new workspace, all you do is type in workspace -a and then the name of it. Let's call it test, and it will create a workspace called test. Then it should automatically switch to your new workspace. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and place all of this in the Illusive workspace that I've created. And to switch to that, I'm just going to type in workspace Illusive. So for those of you, if it's not obvious yet, even if you're not here to learn more about deception technology and what it's like for the adversary to be up against deception technology, this is also a great video for those of you wanting to find content on the post-exploitation steps in a Windows domain. Going after the Active Directory server, living off the land, collecting and harvesting credentials, say from the SAM hive, and then ultimately trying to get domain admin through different tricks, like stealing tickets or passwords out of memory. So those of you who are interested in that part of a penetration test, keep watching. All right, so now that we're in our Illusive workspace, we can go ahead and get Metasploit ready to receive that connection from the victim. And we're just going to use the multi-handler for that. And if you don't remember the actual location of a module within Metasploit, just use the search command. So we're going to just say search for handler. And you can see that it pulled up everything that matches the word handler. And I remember that being under exploit, multi-handler, and it automatically selected the shell reverse TCP for the payload. I like to use the meterpreter shell. We created this as a meterpreter binary. Let's go ahead and make sure to use that. So we're going to say use, sorry. If you type info, it'll give you all the information on the module, as well as show options. And that will tell you everything that you want to configure for that particular Metasploit module. So I'm going to go ahead and set the payload to Windows. x64, meterpreter, reverse TCP. Now I'm going to show options. Now the listen address is basically, or the lhost variable is the listen address for the particular module. And to do that, you just type in ifconfig and you can get your IP address. Now in this case, this is going to be the non-routable IP, not the static IP, but the 10net IP that you see here on ETH0. So I'm going to set lhost 10.0.24. And we're going to go ahead and show options. And you can see that's listening on port 4444. I used that as the default port for the binary that I built with MSVenom. So we're just going to go ahead and type in run. That's all you do. And all it's going to do is just start this listener on port 4444. All right, we have a reverse shell to our interpreter host now. And we're going to go ahead and start our local commands. So we're going to type in get system. Now it looks like we were able to get system via technique 1, which is a named pipe impersonation. Okay, now that we have a shell on the host, we're going to go ahead and run a few commands at the command prompt. First of all, let's find out what member of the group, what group member we're a member of. It looks like we are a member of the administrators group, which is great. So we'll have full control over this local host. We'll find out our privileges. It looks like we pretty much have all of them as a local administrator. And we can go ahead and begin querying actual users. In this case, we can query ourselves in the domain. Tells us the group memberships that we have. So it doesn't look like we're a member of the domain admin group. We're going to go ahead and find out who is the domain administrator, or what are the domain admin accounts in this domain. And there's a simple command we can run at the command prompt in order to find that out. This is something that adversaries will do once they establish a beachhead on the network. They'll attempt to try and find out who are the domain admins. So when we find that domain admin username and password in cache or memory, either from the SAM hive or something else, we know we'll have domain admin once we switch to that user. So let's go ahead and attempt to do that. And it looks like that Dan is a domain admin. That is the only domain admin within this Active Directory domain. So we want to go ahead and look for the password for Dan. So let's go ahead and exit out of here. So there's different commands that are built into Meterpreter that will allow us to do some post-exploitation techniques like dumping the SAM hive. In order to do that, we're just going to say hash dump. And hopefully we can find some passwords that don't need to be actually decrypted. In this case, it doesn't look like it. So, but I still want to grab these. I'm going to piece these into my notes. For those of you penetration testers out there, keep notes. That's the best advice I can give you. Have a notebook open. You want to take notes as you go so you don't forget things that you find. These are all breadcrumbs in our overall kill chain. You want to keep going, logging, taking notes as you go. So I don't see Dan or his password in here. So let's go ahead and run a few more commands. So what I'm going to do is there's a great module within, or plugin within Meterpreter called Mimikatz. It's now called Kiwi. I still call it Mimikatz. If you want to know what commands you can use with Kiwi, simply just type in help and you can see all of the commands here. As you can see, it can list out Kerberos tickets. It can even allow you to use a Kerberos ticket. So if there's a Kerberos ticket in here for Dan, and let's go ahead and write our notes in here that the domain administrator for this domain is Dan, so we don't forget. So let's go ahead and do a creds all, and this will receive all credentials from the system. And looks like we've got some stuff. And I don't see Dan in here, unfortunately. I see John, Jordan, Lauren, Lisa, Sarah. Looks like we've got some NTLM hashes, which is great, from MSV. Let's go and copy those, and I'll paste those in our notes so we can do a little bit of pass the hash later. Incognito is another great module or extension for Meterpreter that I like to use as well. So if we type in here, you can see the commands that Incognito supports. You can attempt to add user to the global group with all tokens, local group, attempt to add user with all tokens. You can impersonate tokens. So let's go ahead and list tokens and see if we can find one. Let's do it by group name. All right, it looks like we have some tokens we can impersonate. I don't see Dan anywhere. All right, that doesn't look like it really gave us anything. So far, don't really have much. All right, so as you recall, we downloaded some tools to the machine that will allow us to list all credentials on the host as well using Lazane, as well as everything.exe. So let's go ahead and play around with those tools. It doesn't look like we really have anything in Metasploit, which is quite upsetting. I won't lie. All right, let's go ahead and see what we've got here. All right. Let's go ahead and type in Lazane and see what Lazane gives us. All right, so here's the syntax for Lazane. Let's just do all modules. Tell us to give it everything it can find. All right. It looks like user John doesn't have any FileZilla passwords. Looks like it found something using Credman. URL EP0354 for Tim with this password. Let's, looks like it's checking vault passwords. Let's check out what EP0354 is. Oh. All right, this is good. Doesn't look like anything's there. Let's try pivoting to that host. Looks like there's a saved credential here as well. Interesting. Doesn't look like it can connect, but it's a real host, according to this. All right, let's try EP0354. So it looks like there's cached credentials for this particular machine for user Tim. So let's try and connect to it. See if we can get anywhere. All right, looks like we can't connect to that host either, yet we have cached credentials for it. Again, this could be another fake machine, synthetic host that was planted there by Illusive. This is definitely starting to become irritating. All right, let's see. CIS files, this looks good. Looks like it can't connect to that either. It says volume CISD. I don't see anything here. All right, so there's definitely hosts on this network it looks like we can connect to. Oh, finance. All right, looks like we have some files here in the finance share. See, now I'm worried, thinking, okay, are these real files? Like, are these more fake breadcrumbs for them to catch me? It's just really unnerving. You know, it's like, why is this open? I didn't even have to authenticate. It's just really nerve-wracking. You just don't know what's real. You don't know what's fake, what's real. I feel like I'm in a movie. I'm in the Matrix. What's happening? CI SharePoint Co. All right, this is really just wacky. All right, it looks like, interesting. Looks like we have some more stuff. All right, I do see something here for Dan. Those are MS cache passwords. Let's make sure we capture that. That's interesting. So we do see something here. London 123 bang is the password for our account. So looks like that was an LSA secrets. FileZilla. Who uses FileZilla anymore? Oh man, FTP. All right, so we have some MS cache passwords for John, Dan, Tim, and Barack, but I don't see those decrypted. I don't really see anything usable except that one password that we already grabbed. All right, so again, I mean, we can connect to that, connect to a couple of these, but I just don't know what's real. Some of these we can't connect to. All right, I'm gonna try also, let's try everything.exe. So it doesn't look like we really have anything. I mean, there's one keyword here called finance on this file server, but again, it doesn't look to be anything of substance. Not really finding anything on the network. Looks like, again, that maybe the same password. Oh, here we go. Looks like we have a file that John stored on in his downloads folder for this machine. And it looks like a different password. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to find what the name of the domain controller is. GP result /Z will tell us give us information on the group policy. So it looks like CIS SRV1 is actually the name of the domain controller. It looks like it's Windows 2008 or later. So we know that CIS SRV1 is a machine that we want to attempt to eventually either get to, or possibly even other machines, if we can try and find, as we continue to hunt for the password for Dan. So here getnet forest is another command we can run in PowerShell to get more information on the actual domain. So let's go ahead and background this interpreter session and use some of our other post modules that are available to us in Metasploit. Here you have a lot of the same interpreter commands that are available to us, like get system, as actual post modules within Metasploit. All right, let's go ahead and continue just mapping out the domain, trying to find machines that we want to pivot to. And to do this, we're going to just run the ARP scanner within Metasploit. So let's first list the network interfaces on this machine. It looks like we have a 10.1.2.24 interface and its local loopback. All right, let's go ahead and run ARP scanner against the network using this 10.1.2.0 interface. So I'm just going to run that within the interpreter shell. So it looks like it's finding some other machines on the network, which is great. Again, we don't know if these are real or if these are fake. Looks like a lot of them actually have the same MAC address, which is interesting. So I don't know, that's telling me these might not actually be real machines. All right, so a lot of these machines have the same MAC, which tells me they may be decoys. Let's look at what might be actually unique. So .6.1.7, there's a powerful command within Meterpreter called autoroute that will allow us to bounce around internally within that network. Remember, the target IP addresses are non-routable RFC 1918 addresses, so we can't hit them from the internet. So what we need to do is set up auto routes that will allow us to be able to get to those machines. All right, it looks like we're finding quite a few hosts internally now, and our route is working. So we're able to reach these other internal IPs. Without that auto route set, we wouldn't have been able to reach them. So here we can go ahead and attempt to reach the domain controller using, for example, psexec. Now, the neat thing within Metasploit you'll find is a command called hosts, and what this will do is it will list all of the hosts within your database, within your workspace that it was able to find. So it looks like we have an IP address for CISSRV1, which is the domain controller for CISD, and went ahead and informed us of that. So let's go ahead and attempt to authenticate with it using psexec. And it looks like interpreter is our default, which is great. All right, looks like we have an access denied. Let's try this host. So clearly we've got nothing but synthetic credentials here that we've collected so far. The inability to connect to anything. All right, finally we're getting somewhere. Looks like we can authenticate to quite a few hosts using the credentials that we have now. So let's go ahead and bounce around these machines and see if we can find the password for another user to possibly get to another machine that might have Dan's credentials in memory. Let's try a few of these. Hoping these are real hosts. You never know with Illusive. Let's go ahead and check one of these IPs that we were able to successfully authenticate with our credentials using SMB login. So this would be 10126. Should be off to the races. We are one step closer. Let's check the username and password we have set. It's John set SMB pass. All right, 10126. Username John, password London123. 10126. Username John, password London123. Run. Fuck you. How can this not be working? SMB login told us that it could authenticate. It must be another synthetic host. It's not real. What the f? Let's try another host. 10110. All right, well, at least that thing's real. But SMB login was telling us that this was successful. Let's try 10113. So SMB login tells us we can connect. It gives us success results, but clearly we're not getting anywhere. All right, so that's it. I give up. All right, so clearly in any penetration test, you want to be low and slow. You want to be as quiet as possible. You don't want to be setting off alarm bells. It looks like everything we've been communicating with in this exercise are synthetic credentials, synthetic hosts. SMB login, these post-exploitation modules in Metasploit are telling us these things are working. They clearly aren't. These are tools I could trust before. I can't apparently trust them now. This is a shit show. So unfortunately, we did make a lot of noise in this effort. I'm anxious to see what Illusive Network saw on its dashboard and the level of detail, possibly even down to the keystrokes, on what was going on here. This just sucks. As an adversary would have moved on to the next victim, I would at this point just be out. I'd just be exit stage left. This is a total shit show. So we really can't trust any of the results from our notes. We can't even at this point trust Metasploit on what hosts we were able to successfully authenticate with. It did look like we were able to get some credentials, but again, these didn't work when we attempted to log back into these machines. It looks like we weren't able to reach any of these things at all. Yeah. So anyway, I walk away from this with my mind definitely changed. I think walking into this, I felt like, you know, deception technology is more of a nice to have. Didn't really need to be a critical budget line item for me as a CISO, but definitely at this point, I would make this a mandatory purchase for me at least. in making sure that my network detection and response and endpoint detection and response were augmented by this. I can't imagine anything interacting with my synthetic environment like synthetic credentials and synthetic hosts unless it was illegitimate activity, unless it was malicious activity. An adversary attempting to pivot around within the network and live off the land. This was just frustrating for me. I never want to go through this again. So hopefully on my future penetration test, my clients are not using elusive networks. This is extremely cool. I just at this point near the end couldn't really trust anything that my tools were telling me. So good guys 1, bad girl 0.
You lose.